to Blake, man. Welcome back to the show. Appreciate you coming on, and we'll catch back or get back on to your story.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me back on.
No problem, dude. So where we left off was you were on your way, or you had just gotten to Iraq, and you were with the state platoon going to Iraq, and you were talking about how there was a noticeable increase, or there was an actual known danger now from like IEDs and stuff, which was not even a consideration during the invasion. I mean, did you guys even talk about possible mines or roadside bombs or anything like that prior to the push up to Baghdad?
For the invasion, mines were definitely a consideration because we expected as part of a conventional war, so a conventional barrier plan, we would expect mines. I don't remember anything specific for like the initial attack, but that was always a concern on some of the places that we stopped. It's like, hey, there's supposed to be an enemy defense here, and you guys are going to get out. And that was like literally all we knew. Like, there's no 5-paragraph order. It's just we're driving, and suddenly like people start shouting that we're going to make a left turn and attack something. So you're like, all right, cool. Hopefully there's not a barrier plan. Didn't really encounter it. The only thing we really encountered was on the very first objective that we had is Alpha 1-5. I don't know if I mentioned the last one, but one of the guys blew off the front of his boot. I think he broke a bunch of bones in his foot, maybe shattered his ankle, but like no penetrating trauma, no bleeding, but he did get medevaced right then and there. So the war only lasted, a day for him.
What a bummer.
And no one was really sure what it was because none of we had EOD techs or engineers doing kind of post blasts, and we figured it was either like a small anti-personnel mine or it might have been a cluster munition that he stepped on.
That'd be unfortunate.
But yeah, it definitely was not a huge thing. And then after, fighting our way most of the way to Baghdad in mop gear and getting to change over into camis, we're kind of like going back. It's like, all right, we're just going to deal with, assholes and rifles and machine guns, and they don't have artillery anymore. They don't have mortars anymore, kind of so we thought. And then we started getting reports about the IED threats and that they were using homemade rockets and mortars. We're like, okay, so a little bit different than what we expected. When we got into Iraq, we got to our FOB. It was, I think we changed it to FOB Mercury. We ripped out with 101st Airborne. They had it called something different, but we changed the name to FOB Mercury. It was attached to Camp Fallujah. That was like the big FOB in the area. But you couldn't go from one to the other. Like, we always had to send convoys to go out and around for like laundry and PX runs and stuff like that. So it was a tiny little FOB, and it didn't even house the entire battalion. One of our companies manned the FOB that was by the Abu Ghraib prison.
Okay.
We had like a company reinforced that was like their home station, and it was Weapons and Alpha Company were on FOB Mercury, and I don't remember where Bravo Company had their home, if it was the same spot or not. But
now, prior to going, obviously the insurgency like kicked up. You guys said you started getting these reports about different kind of threats like IEDs and stuff like that. Did you fully appreciate like what an insurgency was? So I feel like prior to Iraq, most of the people from our generation probably has heard that word like insurgency, but it probably didn't click until some of us started going overseas and seeing what that actually meant.
Yeah, not really at all. The only things that really the closest we could think of come to mind were like stories from Vietnam. The Viet Cong fighting the jungle and then trying to melt back into the local populace in the small towns close by. But that was all we really knew of insurgency. And some of us knew about history, and obviously that was early 2000s. So the conflict in Northern Ireland that Britain had been dealing with, some of us had been watching news growing up, like we were kind of aware of that, but not to a great extent. Like, I knew there was a problem. I didn't really know much about it. We did actually get a brief from a Royal Marine before we left Kuwait, and he talked to us about some of the IED tactics and insurgency tactics that the IRA used against Britain. But it was, I don't know, probably a 2-hour class, and he brought up like wearing electronic countermeasures, and we didn't have electronic countermeasures or anything like that. And just some things that he mentioned, I was like, I don't know if I want to be doing that kind of stuff, because I was really still concerned about being shot more than I was about, you know, a goat on the side of the road stuffed with explosives. And everything was still command det for those guys in those earlier days. And we got another class, or a brief really, when we got in by the Army guys who were ripping out with us. And generally their TTP was all command detonation. So they had a wire out to the charge, and there'd be a dude sitting off on the side of the road, like, you know, 100, 200 yards off. And he would just be waiting there, because a lot of times they would do their post blast. They would be able to trace the wire or find the spot, and there'd be like a cluster of, you know, food wrappers and water bottles. Guy had been sitting there for quite a while, but they would blast, and the Army's TTP in that area apparently just been like, once it goes, like, just floor it, gun, get out of the kill zone, right? Get out of the kill zone. There weren't too many complex ambushes of IEDs preempting, you know, small arms and RPG fire, but there were some. So that was their TTP. So what the Iraqis and the insurgents have been doing was they were just rolling up the wire, because as soon as they detonate the charge, the convoy's flooring it and getting out of the area, and there's no return fire. So they would just reel up the wire so they could use it again. And so I think, I don't want to fully give credit to the Marines if it's not due, or, you know, but it was either a recent Army convoy or a Marine. It might have, I think it was Marine. I think it was 2-4 had decided, well, if they're sticking around to reel up the wire, then, you know, turn vehicles in direction of the blast and start assaulting in that direction. And then when someone starts running away, there's your guy who set off the IED. So that kind of changed some of their TTPs, and it made it really difficult for them to use them against us, because now they realize that if they set off an IED, we're immediately looking for the trigger man to go after them. So that did prompt later on in that deployment. Alpha Company was driving up a road, and they just see some dude running from like the right-hand side, I think it was, just like running out, and he was trying to run out and throw out an IED in time to hit one of the vehicles in the convoy, and he got so excited, whatever, he ended up blowing himself up on the side of the road. So I saw pictures, like the 7-ton front of the 7 just smattered in like bits of, you know, blood and Iraqi.
So he was trying to throw a charge in front of the vehicle as they were rolling down the road?
Yeah, he was like just trying to run up and throw the charge out real quick so he could like run back and detonate it. I don't know, I guess he fell asleep on watch or something, but
like, oh shit, they're here.
Yeah. So their TTPs with it were really, really, really basic, low level. It wasn't a massive concern. We did get hit. One of the weapons company, the Cat Patrols, went out. They got hit with one. And the IED itself actually didn't do a lot of damage to the vehicle, but it sympathetically detonated the javelin that was attached to the outside of the Humvee. So that did some damage to the truck, but no one was seriously hurt. Wow. You know, we had all the crazy Mad Max armies now that we have to deal with this explosive threat, and we all identified that rolling around in unarmored Humvees in the invasion was kind of ridiculous. Yeah. But now we have this like Mad Max armor. It's just like bolted and welded to the Humvees every which way, and the engines weren't necessarily prepared to take all that strain. So you know, a lot of trucks were getting stuck, and it was weird, like lining the bottoms with sandbags and shit like that.
My buddy Hanthorne was telling me about doing the same kind of thing, having that kind of steel L armor that they would weld onto the doors, and then having sandbags and stuff, and then it just these crazy attempts at trying to protect a blast. That's pretty wild that you have not an actual up armored Humvee, but like a ghetto rigged Humvee that survived its javelin explosion. Like, I mean, that's kind of crazy. It didn't do more damage or hurt anybody in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Humvee was
Oh,
down
sure.
from that point on, but I mean, they were able to drive it
Oh,
back.
jeez.
You know,
There you go.
yeah,
Now you've obviously done a lot of deployments, probably seen your fair share of IEDs and stuff like that. How were the IEDs at the very beginning like that? This is when the insurgency is really starting to realize that this is an effective tool to use against the military and stuff like that. How were the IEDs different then compared to like what you saw in the latter part of your career? Like, were they smaller? You're already said they're less sophisticated. They're more like dumbed down versions of it.
yeah. So everything was command det back then. It was either command det or they had like homemade grenades. So they would try to drop those off of overpasses. But not very sophisticated. Most of the charges weren't very big. The biggest key event that we knew about, and it was the first instance, is a daisy chained 3 or 4, I think were Chinese 120 rounds.
Okay.
So that was like, holy shit, like they understand how to connect explosives, and obviously a daisy chained bunch of artillery rounds in the ground. Now you have a much larger kill zone. But because they were so kind of primitive, I guess be the best word for it, in like their initiating systems, there were a lot of failures, which is why we found out about it. They weren't really good at camouflaging a lot of the stuff that they did. There was a cement factory close by, and I don't know if they picked it up from the Chechens or the IRA, but they were starting to hide munitions in concrete. They will replace like a curb with this new cement block that has an artillery round in it. It's already primed in, ready to go, and then they would wait, and when a U.S. vehicle would drive by, they would detonate it. So that was really their TTPs, and the fact that it was all command detonated kind of made it easier for us, because that meant someone had to be watching, and a lot of the similar telltale signs that we see now, where the locals will probably avoid that spot. Concrete or pavement that looks newer than everything else, paint that looks fresher than everything else. But because they had to sit there and observe, anywhere there was line of sight, you were usually able to identify.
Oh. What'd you say? No. Okay. It freaked me out. It freaked me out because you froze for a second. I'm like, no, tell me it's not freezing. All right. So I heard you say they identified, and then it cut off like there for a second. I think you said something about a bridge. Oh, it froze again. I'm going to give it a second. I've already told. So for those watching the live stream, I don't know what's been going on, but anytime I connect with Blake Flannery, every time we set up a podcast, it freezes on us. I'm sure he can probably still hear me too. If what's going to happen is if this doesn't get fixed here in just a few seconds, I'll probably just stop the live stream, and he and I will continue the conversation off, not live, and then I will just upload it later on as its own video. I hate for this to happen though, because this is an issue that I've been trying to troubleshoot for some time now. I've upgraded my internet, I've done work on my computer, but for some reason we still keep getting this weird lag. So Blake, if you're still there, shoot me a message if you can hear me. If not, I'm going to give it a couple more seconds, and then I'm probably going to end this live stream. Crazy. Hey, thanks for the people that jumped in. I know it's not, we don't normally do a live stream early. I say early in the morning. It's 8 o'clock, or now it's 9 o'clock in San Diego. Don't normally do them in the morning, but this works. I've got you, but frozen on my end. Yeah, that's a bummer, dude. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the live stream. Thanks, guys, for checking it out. What I'm going to do is we're going to record the rest of this interview, and then I will edit it and then upload it today. So make sure to check that out here on YouTube today, and I will probably drop the audio today as well, maybe tomorrow, depending on how long it takes me to edit everything. So again, thanks for everyone for checking that out. We'll figure out what this issue is, and we'll get a live stream going where we can ask a lot of questions and stuff.